20,000 years ago, Earth was a frozen wasteland. Ice sheets miles thick covered entire continents. Temperatures plunged so low that simply breathing the air could freeze your lungs. Mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, and cave lions stalked landscapes where survival seemed impossible. In this nightmare world, humans should have gone extinct. We were hairless, slow, and vulnerable, completely unsuited for Ice Age conditions. Yet somehow, we didn't just survive, we thrived. And the secret to our survival wasn't our intelligence, our tools, or our ability to make fire. It was something far simpler, yet far more revolutionary. It was a type of shelter that changed everything about how humans could live, where we could go, and what we could become. This wasn't just any cave or temporary camp. This was an innovation so profound that it allowed our ancestors to conquer the coldest places on Earth and ultimately survive when the climate was trying its hardest to kill us. Today, we're going to explore the Ice Age shelter that saved humanity. The structure that seems so simple we take it for granted, yet represented one of the most important technological breakthroughs in human history. We're going to see how our ancestors engineered survival in impossible conditions, how a single innovation rippled through generations and changed the course of human evolution, and why this ancient solution to an ancient problem still influences how we live today. And I promise you, by the end of this journey, you'll never look at shelter the same way again. The frozen world of the Ice Age. Let's set the scene properly because you need to understand just how hostile the world was during the Last Glacial Maximum, the coldest period of the most recent Ice Age, which peaked around 20,000 years ago. Picture this. You're standing somewhere in what will one day be France or Ukraine or northern China, but nothing looks familiar. The landscape stretches before you in an endless expanse of frozen tundra. No forests, no lush vegetation, just sparse grasses, moss, and low shrubs clinging desperately to life. The temperature averages far below freezing even in summer. In winter, it can drop to minus 40 degrees Celsius or lower. The wind is relentless, screaming across the open plains with nothing to stop it, driving the cold deep into your bones. The sun, when it appears, is weak and distant, offering little warmth. At night, temperatures plummet even further. Without proper shelter, without protection from this environment, a human being would die within hours. Not days, hours. And yet humans were there. Archaeological sites across Europe, Asia, and even some parts of the Americas show clear evidence of human occupation during this brutal period. But how? How did creatures evolved for the warm savannas of Africa survive in conditions that would challenge even polar-adapted animals? The answer begins with shelter, but not the kind of shelter you might imagine. Early in human evolution, our ancestors used caves extensively. Caves provided natural protection from weather and predators. They were ready-made shelters requiring no construction. Throughout Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Europe, caves were home to humans for hundreds of thousands of years. But here's the problem. During the Ice Age in the vast frozen zones where humans were living, caves were rare. The endless steppes and tundra had few rock formations suitable for cave formation. And even where caves existed, they were often occupied by far more dangerous inhabitants. Cave bears, cave lions, hyenas, animals perfectly adapted to the cold and more than willing to defend their homes against weak, hairless intruders. So our ancestors faced a critical challenge. They needed shelter in a landscape that provided no natural protection. They needed to create artificial caves, structures that could protect them from killing cold and predators. And the solution they developed was revolutionary. It was called the Mammoth Bone Hut, and it was unlike anything that had existed before in human history. The Mammoth Bone Hut, engineering marvel. Now let me describe what these structures look like, because they were far more sophisticated than you might imagine. The most famous examples come from sites in Ukraine and Russia, dating to around 15 to 20,000 years ago. But similar structures have been found across Ice Age Europe and Asia. These weren't crude temporary shelters. These were engineered dwellings that required planning, cooperation, and considerable effort to construct. The foundation was made from the massive skulls and pelvic bones of woolly mammoths, arranged in a circular pattern about 12 to 20 feet in diameter. These bones, some weighing hundreds of pounds, were partially buried in the ground to create a stable base. Then the long bones, femurs, ribs, tusks, were interlocked and stacked to form walls, creating a structure sometimes 6 feet high or more. The bones were carefully selected and arranged to interlock, creating stability without mortar or binding materials. Picture the construction process. A group of hunters has killed a mammoth, or more likely, has scavenged the remains of one that died naturally or fell through ice. This is a windfall beyond just meat. This is building material. The bones are massive, unwieldy, difficult to transport. It takes multiple people working together to drag these bones back to the settlement site. Once there, the real work begins. The largest bones, skulls and pelvic bones, are positioned first, creating a circular foundation. Each bone must be placed carefully, tilted at the right angle to support the structure above. Then the walls go up. Long bones are positioned vertically and at angles, their ends fitting into gaps in the foundation bones below. Tusks, curved and strong, are particularly valuable, forming arched supports like the ribs of a giant cage. As the walls rise, more bones are added, each one interlocking with others, creating a dome-like structure that's remarkably strong. But bones alone aren't enough. The gaps between bones would let in wind and cold, so the builders covered the bone framework with layers of animal hides. Reindeer, bison, maybe mammoth hide if available. These hides were probably held in place by more bones weighing them down, or possibly tied with sinew. In some cases, turf or packed earth may have been piled around the base for additional insulation. The entrance was a small opening, probably also covered with hide that could be lifted or lowered. Inside, a hearth, a carefully constructed fire pit, provided heat. The smoke would rise and escape through gaps at the top of the structure, while the heavy hides and bone walls trapped most of the heat inside. Archaeological evidence shows that these structures could maintain internal temperatures significantly warmer than outside, sometimes by 20 or 30 degrees Celsius. In a world where the difference between survival and death was measured in degrees of warmth, this was everything. Why mammoth bones? Now you might be wondering, why mammoth bones specifically? Why not wood, which would be lighter and easier to work with? The answer reveals just how desperate and innovative Ice Age humans had to be. In the frozen tundra where these structures were built, trees were rare or non-existent. Wood suitable for construction was virtually impossible to find. Even in areas where some small trees or shrubs grew, the wood was often too small, too brittle from the cold, or too precious as fuel for fires to use as building material. Mammoth bones, on the other hand, were available. The Ice Age landscape was littered with them. Mammoths were abundant during this period, and they died. From natural causes, from falling through ice, from hunters, from accidents. Their bones lasted for years, decades even, preserved by the cold. A single mammoth skeleton could provide enough material to build an entire dwelling. And unlike wood, bones didn't rot quickly in the frozen conditions. They were durable, strong, and available. But there's another crucial advantage that's easy to overlook. Bones have a particular structure that makes them excellent for this kind of construction. They're rigid yet somewhat lightweight relative to their strength. They have natural curves and angles that can be utilized in building. The porous internal structure of bone provides some insulation properties that solid stone or ice wouldn't have. In essence, mammoth bones were the perfect building material for Ice Age conditions, not because they were ideal, but because they were available, and their properties happened to suit the need remarkably well. The ingenuity here cannot be overstated. Our ancestors looked at the massive, unwieldy remains of extinct megafauna and saw not just food or curiosities, but construction materials. They figured out how to engineer stable structures from irregular organic materials without metal tools, without modern understanding of physics or architecture, working in brutal conditions that numbed fingers and made every task exponentially harder. This wasn't just survival. This was sophisticated problem-solving under pressure. Life inside a mammoth bone hut. Let's step inside one of these structures and imagine what life was actually like, because the archaeological evidence tells us quite a bit. You'd enter through a small opening, probably crawling or stooping, pushing aside the hide covering. Inside, it's dark. The bone walls and hide covering let in very little light. but there's the orange glow of the fire in the central hearth. The space is surprisingly large, big enough for an extended family of 10 to 15 people to sleep, work, and live. The floor is typically lined with more hides and possibly plant materials for insulation against the frozen ground below. Around the hearth, you'd see the tools of daily life: stone scrapers and knives for processing hides, bone needles for sewing, ivory beads and carved figurines showing artistic expression even in these harsh conditions. Piles of firewood and bone fuel carefully hoarded because every bit of warmth is precious. The smell would be intense: smoke, unwashed bodies, curing hides, cooked meat, all mixed together in the enclosed space. But it's warm. Outside, the wind howls and the temperature is deadly. Inside, protected by layers of hide and bone, with the fire burning steadily, it's warm enough to survive, warm enough to sleep, warm enough to live. Life follows a rhythm dictated by survival. Days are spent hunting, gathering firewood and bone fuel, processing animal carcasses, preparing and repairing hides and clothing, maintaining the shelter. Evenings are for gathering around the fire, sharing food, telling stories, teaching children the skills they'll need to survive. Nights are for huddling together for warmth, sleeping in shifts perhaps to keep the fire going, waiting for dawn when the cycle begins again. Archaeological evidence from these sites shows something else too: evidence of community. These weren't isolated individual shelters. Multiple mammoth bone huts were often built near each other, forming small settlements or camps. This suggests that Ice Age humans weren't just surviving individually, but maintaining social structures, cooperating, supporting each other. The construction of these shelters itself required cooperation. Moving those massive bones, building the structure, hunting for food, gathering fuel. These weren't tasks one person could do alone. The ripple effects of artificial shelter. Now here's where this story becomes even more significant. The development of these sophisticated artificial shelters didn't just allow humans to survive the Ice Age. It fundamentally changed what humans were capable of and where we could go. Let me explain what I mean by walking through the cascading effects of this innovation. First, artificial shelter made humans geographically independent in a way we'd never been before. Previously, human settlement was constrained by the availability of natural shelter: caves, rock overhangs, dense forests. If you wanted to live somewhere, it had to provide natural protection. But once humans could build effective shelters anywhere, the entire world opened up. Those vast frozen steppes of Ice Age Europe and Asia, previously uninhabitable, now they were home to human settlements. The key wasn't finding a cave. The key was finding resources: animals to hunt, bones to build with, water sources that hadn't frozen solid. This mobility allowed humans to follow game herds more effectively: mammoth, reindeer, bison. These animals migrated seasonally across vast distances. With portable shelter construction knowledge, human groups could follow these herds, setting up temporary or seasonal camps wherever they needed to be. This made humans far more effective hunters and reduced the risk of starvation. If game moved, you moved with it, building a new shelter when you arrived at your destination. Second, these shelters allowed human populations to grow in environments that should have been too harsh. Archaeological evidence shows that human population actually increased during the Last Glacial Maximum in some regions. This seems counterintuitive. Why would populations grow during the harshest conditions? But with effective shelter and the abundant game herds of the Ice Age steppes, humans who had the knowledge and technology to exploit these conditions could thrive. More people meant more hunters, more knowledge transmission, more innovation, more resilience against local disasters. Third, the engineering knowledge required to build these shelters pushed human cognitive development and cultural transmission. You couldn't learn to build a mammoth bone hut just by watching once. It required detailed knowledge: which bones to use, where, how to create stability, how to weatherproof the structure, how to manage the internal fire safely. This knowledge had to be taught, preserved, and passed down generations. It created a need for sophisticated teaching and learning, which reinforced language development, social bonding, and cultural continuity. Similar innovations across the world. The mammoth bone huts of Eastern Europe and Russia are the most famous examples. But they weren't the only Ice Age shelter innovation. Humans across different regions facing different conditions developed their own solutions, each adapted to local materials and challenges. Let's look at a few examples because they show that the principle, building artificial shelters adapted to extreme conditions, was discovered independently multiple times. In parts of Western Europe where caves were more available, humans still enhanced natural caves with constructed elements. Archaeological sites show that cave entrances were often modified with stone walls and hide coverings to block wind and trap heat. Internal spaces were divided using bone and wood frames with hide walls, creating separate areas for different activities or providing privacy for families within the larger cave community. Even when natural shelter existed, humans improved it through construction. In Siberia, where humans eventually crossed into the Americas via the Bering Land Bridge, similar bone structures have been found, though sometimes incorporating more wood where it was available. The basic principle remained: use whatever materials were accessible to create insulated, wind-resistant shelters. The specific form changed based on available materials, but the underlying innovation was the same. Even in regions that weren't ice-covered but were still extremely cold, like parts of Central Asia, we find evidence of increasingly sophisticated shelter construction during the Ice Age. Pit houses, structures built partially underground with roof frameworks covered in earth and hide, appear in the archaeological record. These took advantage of the Earth's natural insulation, maintaining more stable temperatures than surface structures. What's remarkable is that this wasn't a single invention that spread from one location. It appears to have been discovered multiple times independently because the pressure of Ice Age conditions demanded a solution. And the solution, while taking different specific forms, was fundamentally the same. Build artificial shelters using whatever materials are available, engineer them to retain heat and block wind, and make them large enough to support family or community groups. The dark side of survival. But we need to talk about something that's often glossed over in histories of Ice Age survival: the brutal cost of living this way. Yes, these shelters made survival possible, but surviving wasn't the same as living comfortably or safely. The mortality rates were horrific by modern standards. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age human remains shows us the reality. Child mortality was extremely high. Many children didn't survive their first years. The remains of infants and young children are common at Ice Age sites. The harsh conditions, the limited diet, the exposure to cold despite shelter, the accidents that were always one mistake away. All of these meant that having children survive to adulthood was far from guaranteed. Parents likely expected to lose children. It was normal, horrifying, but normal. Adults didn't fare much better. The average lifespan was probably around 30 years if you survived childhood. Injuries from hunting were common and often fatal. A broken leg in the Ice Age wasn't just painful, it was likely a death sentence. You couldn't hunt, you couldn't contribute, and the group might not be able to support you until you healed, if you healed. Skeletal remains show evidence of healed fractures, yes, suggesting some level of community care, but they also show many injuries that would have been fatal. Malnutrition was constant. The Ice Age diet was heavily meat-based by necessity. Plant foods were scarce. This provided protein and fat, which were crucial for surviving cold. But it also meant vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Scurvy, rickets, and other deficiency diseases likely plagued Ice Age populations. The remains show signs of nutritional stress, stunted growth, and dental problems from the hard, gritty diet. And then there was the psychological toll. Imagine living your entire life knowing that any day might be your last, that a storm could trap you in your shelter until your firewood ran out and you froze, that an injury could mean abandonment or death, that children you loved might not see their next birthday. The stress, the constant anxiety, the grief, these aren't visible in bones, but they were undoubtedly part of Ice Age human experience. The mammoth bone huts allowed survival, but they didn't make life easy or safe. They were the difference between certain death and possible survival, between extinction and continuation. That's how narrow the margin was. With the archaeological evidence. Let's talk about how we actually know all of this. The archaeological evidence for mammoth bone huts is extensive and fascinating. The most famous sites are in Ukraine and Russia, places like Mazurek, Dobranichevka, and Mesen. These sites were discovered in the 20th century and excavated carefully over decades. What they revealed astonished researchers. At Mazurek, for example, 4 mammoth bone huts were found arranged in a small settlement pattern. The amount of bone used is staggering. One structure contained the remains of approximately 95 individual mammoths. That's not 95 bones. That's the bones from 95 different mammoths. The sheer labor involved in collecting, transporting, and assembling this much material is mind-boggling. And this was just one settlement among many. The bones themselves tell stories. Analysis shows that many of the mammoth bones used in construction came from animals that had died decades or even centuries before the structures were built. They were collected from natural boneyards where mammoth remains accumulated over time. This means Ice Age humans were deliberately scavenging for construction materials, traveling distances to collect suitable bones, and planning their constructions in advance. Inside these structures, archaeologists found layers of occupation debris, ash from fires, food remains, broken tools, discarded materials. This allows researchers to reconstruct daily life. The food remains show what was eaten, primarily large game like mammoth, reindeer, and bison, but also smaller animals like hares and birds. Fish bones appear in some sites near rivers. The tools show a sophisticated technology, carefully crafted stone blades, bone needles for sewing, ivory worked into beads and figurines. Perhaps most movingly, some sites contain burials. Ice Age humans buried their dead near their settlements, sometimes with grave goods, tools, beads, ochre pigments. This suggests belief systems, concepts of an afterlife, or at least respect for the dead. These weren't just animals surviving. These were people with culture, art, beliefs, communities. The transition to modern shelter. As the Ice Age ended around 12,000 years ago, the world changed dramatically. The climate warmed, the ice sheets retreated, forests spread across former tundra. The megafauna, mammoths, woolly rhinos, cave lions, began going extinct, unable to adapt to the rapidly changing conditions. And human shelter evolved accordingly. With forests came wood, abundant, easier to work than massive bones, lighter, more versatile. Humans transitioned to building wooden structures, though the basic principles remain the same. Create a framework, cover it with hides or later woven materials, insulate against weather. The mammoth bone hut was replaced by wooden-framed huts, then by more permanent wooden structures as humans transitioned from nomadic to settled lifestyles with the advent of agriculture. But the legacy of Ice Age shelter innovation persisted. The knowledge that humans could engineer their own protection against any environment, that we weren't limited to natural caves and shelters, that we could build anywhere. This knowledge was fundamental to human expansion and success. When humans spread into every corner of the globe, from deserts to rainforests to high mountains to frozen Arctic regions, we did so because we knew how to build shelter adapted to local conditions. The modern house you live in, the apartment building, the skyscraper, these are direct descendants of that Ice Age innovation. The principle is identical. Engineer an artificial structure that protects from environmental conditions, that maintains comfortable internal temperature, that provides safety and security. We use different materials, steel, concrete, glass instead of mammoth bones and hide. But the fundamental concept is unchanged from those first mammoth bone huts on the frozen steppes 20,000 years ago. Why this matters today? You might wonder why we should care about Ice Age shelters in the 21st century. What relevance does this ancient history have to modern life? The answer is more profound than you might expect. The story of the mammoth bone hut is ultimately a story about human adaptability, innovation under pressure, and the power of technology to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. Our ancestors faced conditions that should have killed them. The climate was trying to eliminate our species. We were in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong biology. We should have retreated to warmer regions or gone extinct. But we didn't. We engineered a solution. We innovated, we adapted. And that pattern, facing impossible challenges and finding technological solutions, is the story of humanity. Today, we face different but equally serious challenges. Climate change is altering our world as dramatically as the Ice Age altered our ancestors' world, just in the opposite direction. Rising temperatures, changing weather patterns, environmental degradation, these threaten human civilization. But the story of the Mammoth Bone Hut reminds us that humans are capable of incredible innovation when survival is at stake. We can engineer solutions to problems that seem insurmountable. The Mammoth Bone Hut also reminds us of something else, that what seems normal and inevitable now was once revolutionary and uncertain. The idea that humans could live anywhere, could engineer shelter for any conditions, was proven by those Ice Age survivors. Every time we take shelter for granted, every time we assume that having a warm, safe place to sleep is normal and natural, we're benefiting from that ancient innovation. Conclusion: the shelter that saved a species. As we come to the end of this journey through Ice Age survival, let's reflect on what the Mammoth Bone Hut really represents. It's easy to see it as just a clever solution to a local problem, cold humans building warm shelters. But it's so much more than that. It's evidence of human imagination, the ability to look at massive bones from extinct megafauna and see not just remains, but building materials. It's evidence of human cooperation, because these structures couldn't be built alone. It's evidence of human determination, because the labor involved was enormous and the margin for error was tiny. The Mammoth Bone Hut was the difference between extinction and survival during one of the harshest periods in Earth's climate history. Without this innovation, humans almost certainly would have been pushed back to smaller refugia in warmer regions. Our population would have crashed. Our spread across the globe would have been halted. The entire trajectory of human civilization might have been different. But with this innovation, we survived. We thrived. We spread even further. We crossed into the Americas during the Ice Age because we knew how to survive the frozen conditions of the Bering Land Bridge crossing. We settled the high steppes of Central Asia. We pushed further north than any primate species had ever gone. And when the Ice Age ended, we carried that knowledge forward, adapting it to new conditions, new materials, new challenges. Every time you enter a building, any building, you're benefiting from knowledge that stretches back 20,000 years to those first mammoth bone huts on the frozen steppes. Every time you feel warm and safe despite harsh weather outside, you're experiencing something that Ice Age humans fought desperately to achieve. Every time you take shelter for granted, you're forgetting how revolutionary and hard-won that ability was. The Mammoth Bone Hut saved humanity from extinction. But more than that, it taught us that we could engineer our way out of environmental challenges, that we weren't at the mercy of nature, that human ingenuity could overcome almost any obstacle. That lesson, learned in the depths of the Ice Age with frozen fingers assembling massive bones into protective structures, is perhaps the most important lesson in all of human history. We are the species that refuse to accept environmental limitations. We are the species that builds our own shelter, defines our own conditions, engineers our own survival. And it all started with a pile of mammoth bones and the desperate ingenuity of our ancestors who refused to let the Ice Age kill them.